Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Buenos dias. Christopher Ludwig here, editor-in-chief at Ultima Media, Automotive Logistics and AMS. And the anticipation is over. Welcome to the season finale of the Livestream Hour. For those of you who have joined us every week for the past 4 months, we've been through quite a lot together. I think it's fair to say in terms of the lockdown phase, moving on to the ramp-up phase, and let's hope that we're not moving into the second wave phase, which we may well be in terms of what's happening with the pandemic. But it's been a very exciting season for us here, and a fantastic opportunity to share insight with a global audience on the automotive supply chain. And today is not only a finale, but something of a sequel as well, as we turn a large share of our focus to North America to give you some updates on what is happening in the US and Mexico and Canada from a demand and from a logistics supply chain point of view, hearing from tier suppliers and OEMs. But we're going to put it in a global context as ever, and look ahead to what happens certainly after this finale, because as we know, we're not at the end of the crisis by a long stretch. So let's kick off. Thanks again to all of you as ever for joining us each week, and for coming out again in high summer here to hear us. And apologies if you're getting any sirens in the background. That is the sound of London you hear coming right at you. So let's kick off again. Again, I want to start just by thanking our partners in this series and across the Livestream Hour and our wider Automotive Festival of Transformation, which has been happening over the past 4 months here. Inform, a software and IT company specialized in supply chain and logistics. HAL Horizon Auto Logistics, a vehicle processing and port terminal operator. Proact International, another key logistics and supply chain IT company, and Fract Logistics Solutions, which provides TMS for vehicle transport and logistics. Thanks again to our partners. Do check out their services on our website or on theirs. Our guests today, as I mentioned, we have some returning guests, but obviously with some key updates on what's happening in North America. We're going to be hearing from Maxim Serov, who's the Supply Chain Director North America for Tier 1 supplier Benteler, talking about the restart and ramp up there and what's happening on the logistics side. And we're also very pleased to welcome back Hector Martinez. Hector is responsible for finished vehicle logistics and exports for Honda de Mexico. And of course, it will be very important, I think, to get some real good insight on what's happening in Mexico and looking ahead and getting some lessons learned from both of our great guests today. And we look forward to hearing from you as well in the audience. Don't be shy. Please send through your questions and your comments along the way. If you didn't already, please do check out part 1 of our season finale. This was last week when we spoke to the Volkswagen Group, Matthias Brown, on the global lessons seen from that central logistics organization. Lots of great insights there, from managing a crisis in China to digitalization and looking at the next step. So I'm going to ask my colleague to put a link in the chat, and you'll get a link coming through at you, and you can access that season finale at your leisure. Please do take some time to watch it. I think you'll really find some great content there. And a quick look ahead as well, because this isn't the end for us by any stretch. After the season finale, we'll be really building up to our first virtual conference, and we're really excited about this September, Automotive Logistics and Supply Chain Live. We're going to be bringing together lots of the great content you've come to see on the Livestream Hour, in interactive panels, presentations, keynotes, and a lot of networking opportunity for you. And I won't go into the details of it, but again, we'll put a link through into the chat in a moment, and you can check out the website and get a sense of all that's possible in this format. A lot of great opportunities to set up meetings. You can see some of the speakers which are confirmed already. There's more even since that, with Daimler, Renault, Nissan, lots more every day are being confirmed, and we'll keep you updated. And if you want to get involved in some way, please do get in touch with us, the team. We're very excited to welcome you to this virtual conference from anywhere in the world this September 15th through 17th. Let's turn to the global headlines this week. As you know, across this series, we always like to start with just a bit of grounding of what's going on. And I think it's fair to say that we're we're on sort of two tracks right now globally, where we're still continuing to see some ramp up and recovery, whether it's plants like Ford in Romania moving back to 3 shifts, more investments that are still happening, especially in electrification. And yet we're obviously still faced with plenty of risks, whether it's the still growing numbers in the US, or as we can now see in Europe, a very worrying pattern, of course, in some countries which have seen the rates double in a short space of time, already seeing some renewed restrictions in parts of Spain, Belgium talking about a full lockdown potentially, and other local lockdowns in parts of other countries like the UK, France, and Germany. So it just highlights the risk that's there. Nobody really is talking about wanting to go back into a full shutdown, lockdown mode, but certainly that risk remains, and we'll talk about how we manage that in the supply chain. As I mentioned, lots of still interesting activity happening in the electromobility side, whether it's Tesla confirming it will build batteries at its German plant after earlier saying it wouldn't. Plans for Tesla to build its electric semi as well as its electric pickup truck in Texas, and it's a new plant in San Antonio. Rivian kicking off pilot production, albeit a delayed launch of its trucks into middle of next year. And in the logistics network, we still see recovery, and I'm looking forward to hearing more from our panelists and guests about that shortly. But we're getting reports of intermodal delays, for example, in North America, and some issues there. For example, the Port of LA. In Mexico, there have been some issues and some blockades, specifically in Sonora State, with Ford impacted, and we've got a news story on that, which we'll put into the chat shortly if you want to read a bit more about what's happening there. And of course, we'll hear more during the show too. Container shipping schedules still quite disrupted from our sources, although again, big improvements from what we would have seen 2 months ago, but still probably about 4 times more delays and cancellations than you would have seen last year. And again, we talked about restructuring of the industry and supply chain. A lot of that is going on. Just to maybe the latest example, Mitsubishi potentially closing a plant in Japan, pulling out of Europe, phasing out of Europe over the next couple of years, focusing on Southeast Asia. A lot more of that kind of disruption and change certainly to come. Let's move on to today's show, and the main topic. Of course, we're looking at North America and what's happening here. Let's just start with a very snapshot view of the demand picture. This is from our forecast, our analyst Daniel Harrison, Automotive Multimedia. In our latest report, here you can see the situation for vehicle demand each month. This is what we see happening for the rest of 2020. So obviously across 3 scenarios, our base case is for a 20% fall cumulatively this year. Obviously, it could be worse depending on how things play out, but that's the base case is where we sort of see it going. There are obviously more optimistic forecasts out there too. I think what's interesting to note here is even in the best case, we sort of see some kind of recovery phase that we're still in now as the pent-up demand is sort of caught up, but we see that kind of easing later in the year and a bit more slacker demand, not least as the impacts of the recession and perhaps pullback from government support start to kick in. So that's a sort of snapshot picture. Obviously, the U.S. demand pulls and pushes a lot of the production out of Mexico and Canada too, that's sort of where we sort of see it. If you want more detail on that, by the way, that forecast is part of a much more detailed report and analysis, and we do have that report available. So put a link again through from my colleague there, and I would encourage you to think about checking out this report. It's got a full global forecast and analysis of every market across this year and through to 2030, you can see as you're also some monthly forecasts for the top 12 major markets as well. So check that out. If you buy that, you get a pass to the conference I mentioned too. So lots of great stuff going on there. So moving on, updates and lessons from the North American supply chain, which is where we want to focus today with our guests. So there's a couple of topics that we certainly want to highlight. We've been talking about all season, and clearly we want to look at what's the status of the production and supply chain as we ramp up, as we move into recovery, but at the same time as we continue to face difficulty as the pandemic worsens in many parts of the country and the region. So how do we manage that? supplier capacity and constraints. Where are there shortages? Where are there blockages? How are we managing through this? Logistics network impacts, as I mentioned, whether it's intermodal or whether it's impacts from shipping. How are we being creative to manage through the disruption so far? And that could include further disruption to come, whether it's coming into further into hurricane season or fires and the rest. So how the network is reacting. That could include transport modes and shifts and other to be more strategic, reduce costs, reduce lead time. We're keen to talk a little bit about that. And of course, Mexico looms large, as it did throughout the crisis here, in terms of how the crisis there could impact production elsewhere at different pace, different states, etc. We'll talk more about what's happening in Mexico. EDI and scheduling. This is a big topic from earlier in the season, certainly in terms of matching call-offs to production schedules, trying to get a picture of demand and what's happening. Certainly not an easy thing to do in these very difficult times. So we're keen to talk about that. And optimizing limited inventory levels. We've seen the sort of contradiction of a declining market and yet very limited inventory of particular items, whether it's pickup trucks, SUVs, etc. So putting a lot more emphasis and I would say pressure on the supply chain to deliver and reach the right those customers who are wanting to buy at the right time. Looking further ahead, supply chain digitalisation, crucial topic, has been through the crisis. We see it accelerating coming out of it or going in the post-COVID environment. Sustainability on key topic for many companies as well, perhaps accelerated by COVID. And certainly last but not least, supply chain resiliency has really been one of the major trends and debates that we've had across the show. And I'm looking forward to getting some perspective from our panel and hearing from you, writing your comments and how you think this is going. So with that, I'd like to move on to our first guest, Maxim Serov, who is the Supply Chain Director North America for Benteler Group. Maxim, can you join me on stage? Hello, Maxim.
Hello, Chris.
Thanks so much for coming back and joining the show again. We had you on a couple of months ago before we moved back largely into the restart and ramp up. So it's really exciting now to get some perspective, specifically from tier supplier point of view. And maybe we can just start there. You know, when we spoke at the very beginning of May, I think Benteler maybe had one plant going in South Carolina and was gearing up to restart. A lot of uncertainty at the time then. Here we are a few months later. Can you give us an overview of what's happening in the network now?
Yeah, sure. So hello again to everyone. So first of all, Chris, thank you for this opportunity to represent my company again at this round. So in the beginning, I just would like to say a few words of introduction. So I'm responsible for the supply chain management in the region of North America. So the company is Benteler Automotive. So this is a global tier 1 supplier, originally from Germany, Paderborn, and we have here the regional headquarters in Auburn Hills, Michigan. So actually the company is dealing with the components and models in the area of chassis, bodies, engines, and exhaust systems. Basically, we're working with all leading OEMs worldwide. So globally, we have around 26,000 employees with 70 plants in around 25 countries. So actually, we have a really global footprint. And here in North America, we have 10 production facilities in Mexico and in the US. So this is just a short introduction. Yeah, and like you said, Chris, so since last time we spoke, so the situation has completely changed, I would say. So at the moment, we have all plants are up and running. So actually, as you mentioned, so the US plants are mainly restarted in May. So the Mexican plants restarted on June 1st. So actually, the June, like a ramp-up month, was quite okay, I would say. So we didn't expect such a volume. So we were approximately on 90% from the budgeted level. So we see a very strong demand in July, August, September. So actually, this is even stronger than planned when the budgeted, so which is very good. And then a little bit slowed down by the end of the year, but still quite strong. So approximately on the budget level, so which is of course very good. So the demand so far is quite stable. So I think we will talk about this later, but just in general, that the demand is quite stable, which makes our life a little bit easier. So we can properly manage our inventory and the critical supplies from tier 2. So yeah, this is in general very positive thing. Yeah, from the supply chain perspective, I think that we shut down and restart the region quite smoothly. So I want to thank the entire supply chain team, the Benteler supply chain team, for the hard work. So the purchasing team, of course, the BU teams who were who ensured the efficient communication with the customers. Of course, our logistics service providers for their great support. So yeah, as I mentioned last time, so actually, you know, in the US and North America, we had a little bit time buffer. So because the crisis came a little bit later than in China and in Europe, so we had some time to adjust and to basically to implement all the contingency measures. So and yeah, we immediately implemented a very, let's say, detailed, regularly critical supply chain follow-up. So on the daily basis, we were reviewing all the alerts, all the insights from our tier 2 suppliers, from the providers, from our customers, from the global headquarters, because some of the suppliers are global. And for example, if one of supplier is already shutting down the plants in Germany, for example, more likely it should come also in the US. So by doing this, yeah, I would say very precise tracking, ensuring the efficient communication. So in general, we were able to avoid any part shortages, and actually, I would say that we were able to avoid the significant extra freight, which is in the end is not avoidable. So you have to, we had to spend a certain amount, but it was not a dramatical situation, I would say. So the restart was also managed well. So we didn't have also any shortages or any disturbances due to logistic. Yeah, mainly due to very close cooperation with the customers. So we discussed in the past that yeah, we had some issues with the EDI, and basically this forced us to ensure the very close communication with the customers, which in the end of the day works pretty well. So yeah, and of course the overstock which happened after this sharp shutdown in the US and Mexico also ensured the smooth restart and at least the parts availability for the few weeks. So yeah, it helps a lot. Of course, if you remember, we had a lot of uncertainties in Mexico because the restart was postponed several times. So we were expecting to restart in the middle of May, and then it was moved to the 1st of June. Of course, it didn't play a good role in terms of, let's say, coverage, let's say, or overstock. But yeah, in the end of the day, I think we will manage this very well. So just to make a conclusion, I think we are now up and running all the plants. So we are ensuring the customer demand, but on another hand, the situation is still very difficult and dynamic. And I think this is something what we will also discuss in the next minutes. So unfortunately, the pressure on SCM team, on SCM community is not released. So it's still a lot of things to manage. And just to give you a few examples, so we still have basically this is the brand new situation. We have a quite difficult situation with the freight right now, with the land freight. So especially on the southern border, a very strong demand, lack of drivers, increased lead times, bad weather conditions. So this is it's all have to manage. So also the seasonal capacity reduction on the transatlantic services. So this is what we're experiencing as well, and this have to be managed. And yeah, like you mentioned in the beginning, a lot of threats about the second wave. So, and some customers are concerned, and basically we are also working together with them somehow to ensure sufficient safety stock of the finished good in case if something happened again unexpectedly. So means that we are good, we are up and running, but the situation is still very difficult, I would say.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for that actually I think was a great summary that gives us a real sense of what we're facing, and including the good, if we can call it that, in terms of being able to manage the ramp up fairly smoothly. Sounds like a lot of collaboration and communication played a key role in that. We've talked a lot on the show about things like task forces and working across departments and also clearly across companies and suppliers as well to do that. So, but on that kind of point, whilst we're talking about the spikes and the kind of the worrying trends, which obviously everybody is familiar with. So, at the moment right now, one of the issues, not necessarily in logistics, but certainly that some companies face or have faced, maybe absenteeism, issues around labor. Has that been anything that you've seen, again, whether that's impacting production or indeed logistics?
Yeah, that's true. Unfortunately, the absenteeism is an issue right now in North America, and I think it's not only about the tier 2. It's impacting everyone. As we know, the situation is quite difficult also with some OEMs, and unfortunately, the logistics service providers are also suffering. And from our side, of course, we're trying to mitigate the risk, so we're using all possible options in terms of adding the extra shifts, extra hours, in order to satisfy the customer demands. Of course, so far, we are able to ensure the on-time deliveries to our customers. My concern is that, as I mentioned before, so this is not only about the tier 1 or OEMs, this is also about the logistic providers, and we are hearing a lot of talks right now from the freight companies that the truck drivers are not returning from this furloughs and all these let's say vacations, I would say, because in general the government in the US has also supported the freight companies, and actually some truck drivers is getting support from the government, and actually they are not coming back. So that's the challenge. And as I said, we see right now a strong demand. We hearing a lot of talks about the lack of drivers, about lack of capacities, especially on the southern border, which makes us, of course, a little bit nervous about that. However, I do believe that our professional service providers will do exactly what we are doing to ensure that the requirements are met, and we will manage this, let's say, hopefully temporary period successfully without any significant disruptions, and of course keeping the rates within the contractual obligations, because this is what I'm hearing from some of players on the market.
Again, Rob, that's obviously quite worrying there with the driver issues, and as you highlight, particularly on the southern border side. So that's something we'll talk about, I think, as well with Hector in a little bit too, in terms of what's coming in and out of Mexico. One of the topics I wanted to come on to, and you alluded to it, and I did as well. When we spoke last time, we talked a lot about EDI schedules and mismatches with demand and stuff. And in fact, I just want to share a brief clip of some of what we spoke about then. So just for our audience, I'm going to play a clip, and you should be able to hear it. If not, you might have to click allow audio.
So basically, despite the furloughs, despite the shortened weeks, so our SCM departments were and still available. So we are checking the call-offs on the daily basis. We are checking the call-offs, we're analyzing them, we give the feedback to the customers. So together we adjusting them, trying to adjust and eliminate the errors in the call-offs. So this is what we are doing, and this is exactly what we are asking to do to our tier 2 suppliers and to our providers. And so from the Benteler side, we already distributed the official letter to all our tier suppliers saying that the situation is changing very rapidly. So we are doing our best to notify you immediately as soon as we have any changes from the customers. So another topic with the call-offs, what I would like to highlight is, so because we are analyzing this in, as I said, on the daily basis, and what I can see currently from the call-offs is that the situation looks quite positive in the future. So at the moment, at least in North America, according to the current call-off overall, we see that the recovery of the market will happen something like in June, which is quite quick. So I see that the level of the call-offs is basically on the pre-crisis level is yeah, something like in the middle of June. So which is, from my point of view, is quite optimistic.
Okay, so that was the view. That was the view in May. You alluded to some of that actually in terms of the recovery. So, firstly, give us a little bit of a sense of just how much of that kind of daily change and flow and management is that still kind of happening, and is a bit more stable. And you alluded to some of the positive demand. Were you quite surprised at how accurate it actually turned out to be?
Well, this is interesting to hear what I was saying a few months ago, but actually, let's say I didn't believe that it will happen, but it happened. In the end of the day, as I mentioned, so the June was quite strong. So we see a strong demand in July, August, September, and actually the rest of the year is looking also quite good. I'm very happy to see that actually the situation is quite stable. Within last 8 weeks, probably, we don't see significant fluctuation, and I'm talking about the cumulative customer demand for the region, of course. So I'm not talking about the specific customers, but all in all, so the situation is quite stable. We do see the fluctuation week by week within 1 or 2%, which is very low. So, and of course, this allows us to manage the inventory in the right way, the cash flow, the inbound flows, the critical supply chains, etc. So, as I mentioned last time, all this crisis situation basically force us to use the S&OP process. Yeah, actually, and to pay attention to the S&OP process. So, and as you could see right now, I'm able to give you very quickly the number about the fluctuations, and actually I have the data per every customer, per every plant, per every BU, so we know exactly the customer behavior, and actually this allows us to adjust immediately our actions towards our tier 2 suppliers, toward the logistics service providers, etc. So in general, we are using this S&OP process right now to plan 4 M's, so which is manpower, machines, production schedule, and the method. So it is very well linked, and actually this process is steered by supply chain. So which is from my point, which was always the goal of the company, but I think this crisis just underlined the importance of doing this. Yeah, of course. Especially on the ramp-up phase, we were doing this in very close cooperation with the customers, and I think I also mentioned this last time. So it worked very well, and I'm really happy to see that the customers are appreciating this proactive approach when we are coming up with the very detailed numbers. And sometimes together we can identify some issues, some errors in the demand, and then yeah, so this can be immediately corrected. But all in all, the situation is quite positive. I hope we still be positive in the future, and this trend, let's say, which we are having at least last 2 months will remain the same.
Great. Well, I mean, I think that's message on using the S&OP effectively, on having supply chain able to sort of steer and react to those changes, anticipate them as well. If that is hopefully a lesson that comes out of this crisis, then we'll be stronger for it, I think.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Maxim, before we move to Honda for a while, and there's another question I wanted to ask you, which was, we've talked about the collaboration with the customer and the business units and your tier suppliers. What about, and obviously the challenges being faced on the logistics side with drivers, but have your third-party logistics and service providers, have they been stepping up to innovate during this time as well? I mean, you thank them for the work in the beginning, and I'm sure that is very evident in the success, but this is such a challenging time. Are you seeing more innovation coming from your logistics partners?
Yeah, first of all, again, I would like to thank our logistics service providers for the great support, as I said, so we won't be able to ensure the smooth shutdown and then the restart without their support. This is clear. And I think I mentioned last time that we are working very close with logistic providers, and actually we met a lot of new service logistic providers during the last a year approximately, and we have a schedule for at least for the upcoming year or year and a half for the upcoming RFQs, and So I'm like to use this opportunity to invite everyone to take a part in the RFQs for us. Again, I think I'm not able now to say if we were offered with some new processes or technologies or innovations, because I think that the question is a little bit different right now. We have such a hard time right now just to survive in terms of absenteeism, in terms of hot market, in terms of weather conditions and other let's say restrictions, that my message to the logistic providers would be that we just need to overcome these months, probably, be stable, stay reliable as they always do, and then we will see how to develop further. But I think at the moment we are not there to discuss some innovations. So I really love to discuss the innovations in general in the supply chain, and we have implemented a lot of good things in our plans and also in the transportation logistic, but I think it's a little bit again too early to talk about this in details. However, I do expect as well the innovations in the direction of on-time tracking, for example. So this is always actual to see and to track the goods and the sea containers online in real time and with the high accuracy.
Excellent. Well, I mean, I think that focus on survival and getting through this period is probably requires no shortage of its own kind of innovation, but understand the point there and where the focus should be. So, Maxim, thank you for that insight, and we're going to bring you back in a little while when we have a bit more audience questions and panels. But for now, I'm going to bring on our next guest. But thanks again, Maxim, for that. That was really fantastic insight. We'll see you again really soon.
See you.
Yeah, thanks again. Oh, apologies, wrong share. I'm just about to bring on our next guest. Sorry, pressed the wrong button there, technology. So our next guest is Hector Martinez, who is the division manager for export sales and CBU logistics, finished vehicle logistics at Honda de Mexico. Hector, great to see you and welcome back again to the show. Buenos dias, I hope you're well.
Hey Chris, how are you doing? I'm doing fine.
Excellent, excellent. And yes, I know from speaking before that you're also back in the office now as well. So obviously, why don't we also start as we did with Maxim, with a bit of an update on Honda's network production and supply chain in Mexico. Again, when we spoke last on our show on Mexico, it was just ahead of the North America restart, I believe, a couple of weeks before what would turn out to be at least a couple of weeks before the Mexico starts, because it was delayed. But don't you give us some insight on where you are right now?
Well, currently, I think we have good results. Demand, as it was mentioned previously, it has been increasing, and the impact that we were expecting for last month and current month, it's lower than what we have expected maybe 2 months ago. So we're back to kind of normal production. Of course, we need to reduce a little bit the production due to social distancing. Maybe we reduce about 5% of our daily production, but in order to keep a safe environment here at the factory and to meet the instructions or requests by government, and also save its first in this kind of situations. And regarding the logistics, I think they are currently aligned with our requests. So we have not any delay on part supply. Luckily for us, we do not have any delay on the empty equipment supply. So maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago, we have issues with the rail equipment supply, but it was just for 1 or 2 weeks at the most. But we understand because all the factories in North America restarted at the same time, so I think it was kind of bottleneck for them. But now we are back on track. Regarding our ramp up, well, we restarted when government authorized this in Mexico the auto industry as well, that we can restart these operations, and maybe it was 3 or 4 weeks of ramp up, reviewing all the processes, reviewing the new social distance items, check if we can keep the social distance or not, if we can check how to keep it, and with that, maybe just 4 weeks of ramp up, and now we are back on track 100% as mentioned, and no issues so far. So I think we are lucky to have a good demand on the US side. The expectations of US sales for last month were increased, so the final results were 25% of the forecast that they have after this COVID impact. So since our production is basically for US, I think we have been having good results on that part, and we're lucky on that.
Well, indeed, I'm sure that there's been a bit more than luck at play to make sure that that this has gone as smoothly as it could go. Can we? You mentioned there about the restrictions. Sorry, the 5% or so due to social distancing reductions. Maxim talked about some issues with drivers on the southern border and the US side, and some issues there. Also, some absenteeism issues in the industry. Is that something that you're also seeing in Mexico in terms of absenteeism issues in the plants or in the supply chain, and also on the driver side?
I think it's a very different situation. As Maxim mentioned, the US government is giving some incentives to unemployed persons. So I think sometimes they prefer to have this incentive instead of the normal salary. And on Mexico side, well, I think everybody is trying to keep their job and try to meet any necessity that that we are all requesting in order to keep their jobs and keep a salary for having money for that part. It's very different than the US situation, and the US situation, at least for us in the CBU part, has maybe a minor impact in the US ports. So the import vehicles that we're having, some of the ports are congested because of lack of manpower, but I think this situation will get improved by next month. I think that this incentive will be effective just for until July, so maybe after this incentive is taken out, maybe all the persons will go back to their job or looking to their job in order to keep normal life.
Okay, interesting. So that's less of an issue then, obviously, for Mexico right now. I mentioned at the top of the show that certainly we've seen some inventory shortages for some vehicle types, whether it's SUVs or pickup trucks. Has Honda faced some of that? Has that put some more pressure on the finished vehicle logistics side to deliver and move and optimize inventory?
Well, I think even though we have a small inventory at the US side, that it's, as mentioned, our main customer, we're managing to have a soft production or smooth production and send it to the US. So far we have no issues. We need to meet our customers' demand, but I think so far, at least for Mexico side, it has not been an issue. Just keep a normal production, then link to the normal distribution, and then send it to the US. So no impact on that side.
Okay. I mentioned also as well that there were some issues earlier in the week, at least in some states of Mexico, with the rail blockages and embargoes. Has that not been something that has affected Honda?
No, we heard about the embargo in Sonora, but we do not use that exact part of the rail track. So we are not being impacted on that side. And our shipments to rail have been normal so far.
So in some ways, obviously, it sounds like the situation in the logistics side is pretty stable, at least related to the crisis. Clearly, you know, we've talked in the past before about other challenges that we face in Mexico, sometimes for port capacity or with damage and vandalism in some routes. Are you seeing, you know, any of that improving at the moment, or worse, perhaps because the volume is a bit lower than usual?
Okay, regarding the vandalism, for example, in rail, we have had a very good improvement in the, well, overall this year. It's a very low ratio so far, but also we need to be realistic. We have some months that we shut down production, that we stop our shipments. So we need to evaluate if it was due to volume down or if it was due to good countermeasures. So far, these months that we have normal volume, the rail companies' countermeasures have been extremely good, and we are having good results on that side. So we need to review if they can keep these countermeasures in order that our vehicles can keep safe transit to the US side. But I think they are doing good work, but it's a kind of mixture between their work and also the volume down that we are having. We need to keep a close eye maybe for the next 3 or 4 months.
Okay, well, again, hopefully that there is a trend that can continue, but as you say, maybe realistically there'll be some return to form there as it goes forward. You know, during this period, or obviously it's been something Maxim mentioned as well, from, you know, the importance of tracking. Have you used any new tools or processes with your providers or your partners to sort of better track and manage your logistics network and operations?
No, we're having our exact same tracking tools. Just to review how, well, all the parts, where are they going, when they are arriving. But what we are doing is increasing our window time. So maybe we just track in the past for the shipments that will arrive between the next 3 weeks. So now we're having tracking for the next 2 months in order to have a fast reaction time in case of one of our shipments get delayed. But just we are increasing tracking window, and also we are having very tight communication. So before the ramp up starts, for example, with the rail companies, we have very close communication. We were sharing our shipping plans on a weekly basis, monthly basis, so they were prepared. And if there was any delay due to government restrictions, we make update daily basis, so they have the latest information. So I think that the key driver for this part and having a good ramp up and good supplying parts, it's communication that we're having. Maybe the only tools that we're having as additional, it's for example, the increase of usage of Skype or Teams from Microsoft in order to have a more conference call. Maybe face-to-face communication, it's better, but in the past it was a little difficult to schedule some meetings, but now this kind of communication has improved a lot, and I think the results are really good. So this is the only additional technology that we're increasing the usage of, but regarding the other procedures, just increase communication with our suppliers.
It's interesting, on our season finale part 1 with Volkswagen Group, head of digitalization last week was telling us the tool he probably used most in some ways during the crisis was Excel. So there's the head of digitalization admitting that in some of these modes, really just making sure the communication is right. It almost doesn't matter what the tool is, especially when it's changing as fast as it is. Maxim talked about that supply chain steering some of these demand forecasting, integrating and changing its communication based on forecasts and working with suppliers and customers on these variations. Have you seen that sort of communication continue to stay at a more fluid level, at a higher frequency of exchange, more rapid sort of shifts and change than you did before the crisis?
Yes, I think we have increased this communication and also being a little bit faster. So if we have any concern for any part supply, we need to get communication with all the suppliers, just in case we need to readjust our production sequence. So far, we have had a really minor impact, no big changes, but we need to keep very fast communication and keep all our suppliers really updated with information. So they know exactly how many parts we will need for the next week, on which shift we will be producing, etc. So they can also commit with the supply of the parts and we can receive everything on time. But yes, we need to increase, well, we have been increasing a lot of the communication on that part.
You mentioned as well, obviously, about communicating on the as restrictions might change. And as when we spoke in May, that was before the restart, and at that time there was, put it mildly, some confusion, I think, on what some of the government plans and restrictions and changes were. Do you feel that now it's a bit more stable on this side too? Is it still a challenge in terms of managing through different restrictions in different states and parts of the country?
Well, I think now it's a little bit more clear. When we have our last meeting, on that exact day, the government was deciding if the auto industry was going to be essential or not in Mexico. So maybe 2 or 3 days. Well, on that day, they declared it was essential, but it was not so clear how it was going to be essential or just some parts of the auto industry. Then it was completely clarified that the auto industry was fully essential. And with that being said, I think everything got really smooth. We just have one minor impact with one Puebla supplier. It was Benteler, but due to Puebla's government restriction. So even though all the country has approved that the auto industry was essential, Puebla wanted maybe for 1 week or 2 weeks to be on the opposite side of the government and mentioning that they will still keep the auto industry shut down for 2 additional weeks. So that was one of the minor impacts that we have. So we need to rearrange our production in order to review how was the situation on Puebla State. That was the only issue. And after that, all the states are aligned that auto industry is essential. So we have approval. We just need to meet all the health ministry requirements and all the government requirements. But I think all the auto industry part has been completely aligned, meet the request, and keep a very secure social environment for our associates. So no issues from that part.
That's good to know. Before I bring Maxim back, I wanted to also play a clip of something we spoke about in May on collaboration. So let's play the clip and then we can talk about what's maybe happened since. So okay. Again,
I think we need to restart all the items that we have pending for having tighter communication between all OEMs. Check, as Susan mentioned, capacities, try to support each other OEM and try to get benefits of this tight communication. Maybe some co-loadings, maybe give or start or continue sharing your best practices in case of vandalism, for example, or other items that we can share. But I think this would be the time that we can be together and try to get benefit of this communication.
Okay, so there we were. We're talking about this is potentially being a key time to start thinking, breaking some taboos, maybe co-loading as a potential. Obviously, sharing more information on the vandalism side. It's only 2 months ago, but nonetheless, have you seen any further moves in this direction? Do you still think this is perhaps a good time to come closer together with other OEMs?
I think currently it's not the time. Maybe in 2 months or so. Currently, we have, the dealers have restarted operation in Mexico, but for May, April, all the dealers were closed. So we did have some needs to change routing in the past months to send all the products that we were receiving from import markets to our factories. So there was no need to have a co-loading because all the product was moved to one same location. Now the things are getting smoother. Dealers are all reopened by now, but we need to maybe start releasing all the inventory. So far, we have released most of it to our dealers network, but until we know for certainty how will be the demand the dealers here, and how will be if there's some closure due to some additional restrictions due to COVID. I think we need to keep maybe a close eye on how it's the market here in Mexico before start rethinking about this co-loading. But when this gets back to normal, or to the new normal stable, we should think about it. And I will touch base again with some of other OEMs in order to try to start this co-loading. I think it's good option, but so far we need to be really focused on how it's the demand of our own dealers, how it's the new distribution, because maybe with this some distribution to local networks will be changing, but after that we have now the complete picture, we start again with the co-loading part.
Okay, fair enough. I think, obviously there's some priorities at this moment in terms of getting that inventory to dealers. So maybe co-loading isn't quite the moment, but nonetheless, a key message there, something we're happy to help facilitate as well. I'd like to bring Maxim back now. We'll have a few more minutes where we can maybe just share a few more lessons with our audience as we come back. Thanks again, Maxim, for joining us. So whilst I have you both here, I can ask a question maybe that's related on Maxim side, on the container side, and then Hector side more on the Ro-Ro finished vehicle side. So when we spoke earlier in the year, and clearly I alluded to up front, the container shipping schedules were quite distorted and weren't so reliable, and there were delays and things, and blank sailings, etc. So Maxim, I thought firstly, if you can give us some insight from Benteler's side, from the supplier side, how you've been managing through that since and how it's improving. And then Hector, I might turn and just get a sense from you on the Ro-Ro side in terms of schedulings and frequencies and how that's been working since we spoke last. So start with Maxim.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, in general, the oversea flow is quite significant at Benteler. So we are importing approximately 4,100 TEU per year from overseas. It's not only because Benteler wants to buy the parts from Europe or from China. So many suppliers are directed by the OEMs, so we have to do it. But in general, as I mentioned last time, for us, the overseas supplies are very important. So, and luckily, after restart, I don't see a lot of blank sailings, for example, or delays on the sea. However, and this is a quite new information, a quite new challenge which we have to work with right now or live with. So this is the reduction of the capacity on the transatlantic in transatlantic. So basically, what the shipping lines are doing, they're reducing the number of departures from the specific European ports. So for example, from the port which we are currently using, so instead of 2 departures, there will be 1, which is of course doesn't bring any positive things to the situation. So we're losing obviously the flexibility. So we're losing so actually, we're losing flexibility in case if the containers will be rolled. So we have again, we are losing 1 week. So actually, the 1 week can become 2 weeks because we don't have the second sailing anymore. So of course, this is just brand new, as I said. So we anyway securing this with our safety stock for the components, for the finished goods. So we're fine with that, but again, still a new challenge which we have to cope right now. And just another things to mention that again, I'm using this opportunity and just like to say that on the regular basis, every year we are doing the RFQ for the sea freight. For the sea supplies, and actually this year RFQ is coming, and it will start very soon. So again, we are welcoming the sea forwarders to participate in the RFQ.
So, well, that's a key message. We'll make sure we keep getting out there. I hope that the audience is paying attention to get involved in that RFQ. Just a quick follow-up on that before I turn to Hector, in terms of that reduced sailing. And you mentioned early on that you've managed to keep the expedited and premium freight relatively stable despite, you know, the challenges. But I suppose, you know, without increasing the safety stock, the risk of those reduced sailings would be that there may be potentially more sort of air freight or premium freight to sort of fill in when there are issues, if there's fewer sailings and therefore longer kind of lead times. Is that something you're worried about? Is that something that you think you can balance with the safety stock with enough time? Sorry, Maxim, that was meant to be for you. Did you?
Oh, sorry. This is okay. So
yeah. Just whether if that reduced frequency of sailings was risking that you had to use more premium freight in certain circumstances.
No, of course, we have the contingency and backup scenarios in place. So at the moment, it's not that critical that we have to fly the parts, for example. It's not the case. So we are fine, and we are still monitoring the situation. So and how it will develop. I'm just let's say giving some heads up what can happen and what we are experiencing right now. So however, if we are talking about air freight options, what we are doing right now, and actually it was also, let's say, forced by the pandemic, and during the pandemic time, in order to improve the working capital, the cash flow, of course, we are now checking the options, for example, to fly some high density material, expensive parts from Europe or to China to the US, and comparing the cost with the sea freight. So that kind of business cases we're doing, and it might be reasonable if we're talking about expensive high density materials.
Right. Thank you for that. So Hector, on the kind of RoRo side, whether it's, because obviously you're also responsible for exports from Mexico, and obviously I'm sure the import side too. If we looked at the deep sea side, and then also I guess the short sea links with North America, how has that developed? Has that stayed stable? Is there similar trends in terms of some reduced sailings and frequency?
Okay, well, basically it was well, the situation started when the keep home policies began at the US, and the OEMs halted production. So vessel companies anchored their vessels close to Veracruz, which is our main gateway to the US East Coast side. So therefore, by the time we were restarting shipping, was not as difficult because the vessels were already there, and now sailing companies are working to have more stable schedules. At these times, maybe vessel rotations bookings are not as stable as they used to be in the past before the COVID impact, but our vessel companies are expecting to have this situation back to normal or back to track during August. So we can have a normal vessel scheduling. This for the US, that it's our main market. In case of South America, that we also distribute that market, we have had some vessel schedule cancellation because lack of volume or lack of vessel parts. So our impact is maybe a little bit more concerning for the South American part. In the US, it's mostly stable. Lucky for us, our bigger volume is for the US.
Understood. Yeah, absolutely. Hector, another point I wanted to raise to you, because way back in February, in another time, in another world, when we met in Mexico City, met in person, imagine that. You shared some thoughts on stage about motivating your teams and developing logistics talent for the future. And I'm sure that this is even more important in these times, but I just wondered if you could, have you had any reflections on this sort of working with your teams, motivating your teams in this kind of crisis, when obviously some aspects are virtual, some aspects are back in office, there's so much uncertainty. Has this changed your approach in any way?
Well, I keep my standpoint that our associates are the main part of the company and that we need to keep them motivated. It has been a little bit difficult due to the social distancing, and also a lot of home office was established during this time, so not all the associates are at the same time at the factory, so it's a little bit difficult, but I think we should keep trying to keep our associates motivated. I'm trying to talk with most of them, giving some advice. Maybe now it's a little bit easier also to have more time to specific associates, because with the meeting set up, we can focus to specifically some associates. But as mentioned, we need to keep developing our main associates. We need to keep them motivated and start building the new generations that will be on charge in the near future on that part.
Absolutely. So, and I guess Maxim, just from your side too, I mean, this is clearly, you know, when you look to the future and to your teams and developing talent, has this given some new perspective on how to work with and motivate teams?
Yeah, of course, and yeah, in general, I agree with Hector that it was a little bit difficult to keep the spirit and the motivation while having people in different, sometimes even in different countries. So, but I think we again having all these challenges, and we are again professionals. We were working against these challenges, and I'm really, let's say, appreciate my teams, because during March, April, and May, when the production was down and other departments basically had not so many things to do, but the supply chain was really on a hotspot. So we had to manage all these crises, restrictions, and shutting down and then restarts, working very close with the customers, analyzing the demands, the forecast. So it was, I would say that during these times, the workload is even higher. So, and as I mentioned before, I think that the importance of the supply chain is also higher, which is good, because in the end of the day, we are managing the entire end-to-end supply chain and the material planning, and the entire production company somehow is working with the material. So we are working around the material. So difficult, but yeah, we have to cope with this one. We have to find other ways to keep the motivation. Yeah.
Well, taking center stage in such a key central role in and of itself, whilst challenging, can hopefully be a motivating factor for many people in this space, and that's something that we hopefully encourage and like to see. Maybe just some last kind of thoughts. You know, obviously, when you look back over this period, you know, we've already been talking about some lessons and some challenges you face, but is there any other kind of lessons you'd want to draw out and share with our kind of audience about, you know, kind of what to take forward? Because we don't know what we're going into clearly in the next 6 months, whether we're continuing to ramp up, or whether we have a second wave, or if we even left the first wave. But you know, if there's any kind of thoughts you'd like to share, or even further messages to your partners, then I'd welcome you to do that as a conclusion. Maybe Hector, I'll start with you.
Okay, well, I think that what we have learned is communication is very basic for these kind of items and for all the operation that we're having. So by increasing our communication, we are guaranteeing that our production is stable and also that our logistic operation is stable. So we need to focus on how to keep improving communication with our suppliers, with our partners, in order to have everything going well. And I think that's the most important part that we need to try to develop, because I think in the past we lose some sort of communication, or we didn't provided enough information to our suppliers. Maybe some not good mindset was that information was power and do not share it with everyone. But I think now we need to share as much information as possible in order that we can have the best response from our partners and suppliers, in order that we all meet our common target. So I think that's the thing that we learned, to improve a lot the communication and share as much as possible the information in order that we can get very good results from them.
Excellent, key message there. Anything you'd want to add, Maxim?
Yeah, from my side, maybe just my personal lessons learned, because you know that I used to work in Europe before in a few countries, and I can say that my lessons learned is that in general the supply chain in North America is much complex than comparing with Europe. So assuming just the distances, the weather conditions, the geopolitical situation, the situation on the border, and all that stuff. So and everything, all this situations have to be managed well. So from my point of view, so the lessons learned number one is that to minimize this, let's say, threats and disruptions, so we have to go local. I think this is nothing new, but again, as I said, we have a lot of parts coming from far away, and I think this is the challenge. Second lessons learned, as I mentioned before, also S&OP process is very important. So the planning and the forecasting. Basically, this is the key, and I think we really made a very good lessons learned, especially in terms of inventory management, because I think that now during these 2 months we made such a deep dive into the planning, into the inventory management, that our inventory in general even healthier right now than before the crisis. So we eliminate all unnecessary overstock, some potential obsolete parts. So it's really it was really beneficial for us, and we would like to keep all these kind of temporary processes which we implemented during the pandemic further on. Like Hector mentioned, communication is a key. So, and this is my message also to the logistics service providers, because I know that a lot of them will be watching this, that the transparent in-time information, insights are very important, because the situation is so dynamic right now. And you guys, these guys, they know they're on the front line. They know what's going on with the sailings, with the world volume restrictions, with the absentees, with the situation on the market, everything. So all these insights should be communicated transparently and openly as soon as possible. Then we can react accordingly. So this is very important. And of course, I'm expecting also the flexibility, because the situation is, as I said, still difficult. So we are doing our best to keep our customers running, and we expect the same from our service providers. So we have to survive, I think, the next few weeks and maybe a month, when the market will adjust to the new reality, I think, and then the situation will be more stable. But of course, the upcoming ones will be difficult, but then let's work together to survive them.
Well, absolutely, and I think those are some great takeaways from both of you. They put a lot of emphasis on the key role that supply chain plays, communication as well, but also, as Maxim highlighted, this sort of communication S&OP process, how the different departments can work together, using data to both react and anticipate and make those changes. I think this is also really key. And of course, the localization aspect is a very interesting one. And I think seeing how that develops will certainly be something we're keen to talk and track more of. For Maxim to say that North America is complex, this is a man who's worked in Russia, I think, as well too. So I think, you know, if you talk about complex geopolitics, he knows them. So clearly that North America ranks up there is certainly a statement in of itself. And I can commend both of you for the work that you've been doing to manage through it, and also your teams and companies, of course, and all of you. So thank you for that great insight. I should also mention that there's been some questions about how how people can get in touch about the RFQ and other areas, and I'll certainly help to facilitate any kind of connections with people who want to get that information, and I'm sure Maxim will then help channel that through to the right parts of that. So we'll certainly help on that side, and there's also similar requests on Hector's side there too. So thanks from both of you again from my side, both for your great contribution today and before, and just keeping us updated. It's really useful stuff for our audience and for us too. So we look forward to keeping this going on future live streams, on our virtual event in some ways, and other formats as well. So thanks to both of you.
Thank you, Chris.
Great.
Thank you very much, Chris.
My pleasure, my pleasure. So that sort of leads us to start to wrap up, and as I said, this is, you know, our season finale. It's not our series finale. There was a few people commenting and hoping that we continue. We will continue in various ways, and not least with the conference, as I mentioned, coming up, and in the future we'll also have future seasons too. Later in the year. So we'll keep you updated on all of that. A couple of things I wanted to highlight before we close ahead of the end of the show. So just a quick point, as well as the season finale part 1 for you to check out. Please also check out, just released as well, for those of you who have been following our North American vehicle ports special edition, and also our earlier live stream hour there, where we ran out of time to have Q&A. We've recorded a Q&A and just published that with our panelists there. So check it out. There's another link that's been dropped your way. So you've got plenty more to come there as part of our finale series. And I wanted to just take a moment to thank all of our contributors over the past 4 months since we started this as a single live stream at the end of March. Then was Wolfgang Lehmacher, who is also here on our page, and we've had since then more than 40 people, key thinkers, players, decision makers in the supply chain, logistics, production sector, join us on the show, including from some of our own team as well, sharing insights and thoughts. And so we're really thankful for all of our guests, and equally so to our audience who have been along for the ride there too. So I just you know, I think we've also got a link to all of our past shows. You can view them all on demand. They're all available on our festival page, which we'll have dropped to you as well. So if you missed the show, please go back and check it. Really encourage you to, because it wasn't just news being shared there. Everyone was sharing, as you heard today, really sharing their insights on how they saw things developing, with lessons they were learning in real time. And it's been interesting to see how they've been developing as we go ahead. So thanks again to everyone on that side. Season 2 kicks off with our virtual conference. So we are not, you know, this isn't the end, as I said. I told you about it in the beginning. September 15th to 17th, we'll have many of those previous speakers back, but many new ones as well, developing the conversations further, picking up on some of the lessons, for example, that were mentioned here, whether they're communication, whether they're about localization. We're really excited to do that. So really encourage you all to join, come with that. We'll even get a chance maybe to have a virtual coffee there, because there's a lot of, or beer, as I'd probably prefer at this time. So join us then in September. We're really looking forward to and excited about this one. I wanted to just take a moment as well to thank all of our season 1 partners. You know, that includes our current finale sponsors, as I mentioned earlier, Horizon Auto Logistics, Proact, Fract Logistics Solutions, and Inform, but also CNW, who was a partner for so much of our season, and a number of other additional partners along the way, including our greener supply chain partner, Kuehne Nagel, and a North American vehicle port partners, which included Philiport, Port of Mobile, Alabama State, Port Authority, the Port of Vancouver, USA, Port of New York, New Jersey, ICL, Georgia Ports, and Trinity Rail. It's been great to have these partners along with us, and we look forward to continuing the collaboration in future seasons and indeed on our event. You know, it's certainly not just been me helping to deliver this, but the key people who have really helped make it happen. Nimish Ladwa, International Conference Director, and Richard Logan, also our International Conference Director and producer, content producer, who have both, you know, worked so hard alongside me and other team members to bring those 40+ guests to craft the content and shape the agendas. So Rich, Nimish, it's been great to have you along the way. You know, we'll have a virtual drink after this for sure to celebrate, and I'm sure I just wanted to maybe give you guys a chance to thank and say something to our audience ahead of hopefully seeing them again in September.
Yeah, sure. Thank you very much, Chris. It's been a great pleasure, you know, organising this. Hope that you've the audience has found it valuable. I'd also like to take this opportunity to thank you, Chris, for doing an outstanding job in preparing, organising, and hosting the majority of the shows. It's been many a late night for you, as we know, but a valuable experience for us all, and of course the challenge of moving to this virtual world that we find ourselves in, this new reality, is one that we'll continue to work together on. And as you said, look forward to season 2 and the virtual conference coming up in September. So thanks to you too, Chris, and of course to Richard for being a great supporting partner in all of this as well. So thanks everybody. It's been a great experience for sure.
Yeah, thanks guys, and I'll just add from my side a big thank you to everyone who's helped make this this season possible. Whether you're contributing, supporting behind the scenes, starring in the shows, working through the night to produce slides and PowerPoint presentations. You've appeared and you've shared insights that have guided the industry in this time of crisis. It's certainly been a ride. It's been a journey, and thank you for joining us. We look forward to the journey continuing with you all.
Absolutely. So with that, you know, if you were waiting for a cliffhanger to see, does he get the girl? Does he get killed off? Will we see him again? So you're just going to have to wait until season 2 to kind of find that out during the virtual conference. But there's plenty of things to discuss then, plenty of topics to pick up, and we really can't looking forward to doing it all with you. So thanks again from all of us here at Ultima Media and Automotive Logistics and AMS, and we'll see you again really soon, and not least during the virtual conference. Signing off. Have a great rest of the summer, everyone.